All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's time for us to start our conversation right now. Dr. Rose Gidado is the Deputy Director of the National Biotechnology Development Agency, that's NABDA. She's also the Country Coordinator, Open Forum on Agricultural Biotechnology in Africa, the Nigerian chapter. You're seeing her right now on the screen. Welcome to you, madam, and thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for inviting me here today.
Yes, let's start with, today's World Population Day, and just, you know, our population is close to 200 million people, according to MPC, National Population Commission. But according to UN, we've exceeded that. We are 201 million people. But whatever it is, our population is growing at a geometric rate. Yes, our population is not, our population growth rate is more than our GDP growth rate. It's more than our economic growth rate. And I've discussed it many times here on the show. But the question right now is, as we're discussing agriculture, are we producing enough food for 200 million mouths?
We're definitely not producing enough food for the 200 million population. Our food production does not really match population growth. Our population growth is, you know, just like you said, geometrically. Presently, we're 200 million. And then by 2030, I think it's actually projected that Nigeria will be almost 400 million. And so we need to really transform agriculture for us to be able to have enough food for the teeming population. And how do we transform agriculture? Of course, we need a new approach to that. And the approach, of course, should focus on science, technology, and innovation for us to really have enough food for the teeming population, to have enough, and then to be able to trade, and then to be able to export, you know. So focusing on science, technology, and innovation is actually very, very key. It can't be compromised. That's the only way. The other parts of the world who are today really exporting food, they're having enough to trade, having enough to export, you know, having enough to feed their population. It's science, technology, and innovation that actually, you know, made them to be where they are today. If you remember, in those days, Nigeria, Brazil, Argentina, India, we were all on the same level, same, you know, class. But today, Brazil has gone far higher than Nigeria. Brazil is exporting. Brazil can even give food aids. Argentina, the same thing. India has gone far. And where's Nigeria? Even in Africa, South Africa, it's far ahead of us. If, you know, even with the drought, you know, that they experience, there's a lot of drought in South Africa.
Like
they
Cape
go
Town,
to, like Cape Town and what. You know, it's technology that is actually making them, you know, keep the pace, taking them to that level where they are today. But in Nigeria, we're still far backward. Africa generally, we're backward in food production. And so I think food productivity of Nigeria today, I think it's like, is it 1% or what? But those days, we were higher, you know.
So the
but
question is, why is it? Because is it that a lot of people don't want to farm anymore? Or our farming practices are not modern? Because we still do a lot of subsistence farming.
Yeah, we have a lot of challenges facing us. We have the climate change is one of the challenges, changes in temperature. You know, for every 2 degrees rise in temperature, there's a publication by Ilo et al. That says that seeds of sorghum, of rice, of millet, and so many other seeds do not germinate. And you know that we're experiencing that climate change. It's real, it's coming. Desert encroachment is another one. And then there are many other factors, limiting factors. And these factors, we have access to, you know, finance, you know, by the farmers, credit finance. You know, most of our farmers are smallholder farmers. They don't have much. They don't have anything. They are into subsistence farming. For years, they have been into that subsistence farming. They can only farm enough to feed themselves. By the next planting season, they're out of food. And so we cannot keep, you know, keep on being in that. We have to transform agriculture. We have to make it a business. We have to make it, you know, such that it can actually contribute tremendously to our GDP. Of course, and then we have many other limiting factors, soil degradation, you know, we have gully erosion in Nigeria, we have flood disasters, apart from the desert encroachment in addition to that, and then we have insect and pest infestation. We have emerging insects that are actually competing with us human beings for food. Most of these crops that we plant in our farms, they are most of the time infested. The chemicals are no longer working. Sometimes even when they work, some of these chemicals are hazardous. You know, the farmer will have to carry it and what. I mean, there are so many other things. And then the remote sensing, you know, we around this area, we haven't yet advanced to that level of remote sensing. I remember last year when I traveled to US and we visited some farms, and the man, a family of 3, their farm measures 400 hectares of land. And through this imagery, you know, the satellite imaging and what, you know, they're able to know if there's an oncoming disaster, you know, if your crop are going to be infested by insects and what, you get it on your phone and you know it, and you know, and you prepare against that. There are so many other things that actually saw over there. And then they use drones to spray their farms. Drones are being used to spray in, because carrying this on your farm, there's no way you can do business with that. There's no way you can, you know, manage a large expanse of land, you know, with just 1, 2 people. It's not possible. By the time you finish, you are dead, you know, your health-wise and what. So the limiting factors are so many. We have the post-harvest losses that we are contending with. 20 to 60% of what we produce are being lost through post-harvest losses. And most of these post-harvest losses, some, especially vegetables, mechanical injury, mechanical damage, you know, bad roads, you know, that's lack of good roads that we have, motorable road, and then lack of refrigerated transport systems. You know, we need to have transport vans and all. And then, you know, this, we have good road networks to transport, where the farmer will be able to transport, you know, what he has harvested to, you know, the market centers, you know, to processing zones and what. Good road network is what we need. Refrigerated transport system is another thing, especially the vegetables. And then we also need to, like in terms of greens, most times, the farmers don't have good storage facilities. Like now you're showing silos.
Yes.
We don't have much of that. Where does
Even
it
the silos,
keep?
what are inside?
That's the thing. So with low productivity, with all these you know, factors that are coming in, I mean, how can you do business, you know, with farming? How can you have enough, even enough to eat? We don't have.
So we are not food sufficient.
We are actually not food sufficient because our productivity level is very low. So we need to rise up. We need to rise up to this challenge. We need to mitigate, you know, all this. Access to market is another thing. Yeah, you could maybe use the technology, but even when you use the technology and you have enough, you've had your produce or your farm produce is, you know, large enough. There's no, if you don't have access to market.
So with all those things which you've enumerated now, do you think we've started scratching the surface of being food sufficient, scratching the surface in terms of moving agriculture, let alone agribusiness?
Agribusiness,
yeah. Yes, because agribusiness is something different, and I don't know what to say anymore, because
it's really
serious.
It's a very serious thing. We have the poor soils. You know, this urbanization is actually taking up the arable land that we have. Urbanization, because of the population growth, everybody wants to build a house, everybody wants to do a factory, everybody wants to, so, you know, all this together, the arable land is being taken up, you know, by one flood disaster, by urbanization, you know, by gully erosion. Like in the southeast, when you go, gully erosion has taken up almost everything. So, I mean, limited mechanization. Mechanization is one thing. For you to be able to take agriculture to the next level, we have to take mechanization very, very seriously, I tell you, so that you can have planters. You know, only very few people in the society will be able to afford that. The peasant farmer cannot afford those tractors and what. The money to give them out. Because I remember just a few weeks ago, this is, I think, my first time of, you know, going into the real farming myself. I mean, just 1 hectare of land. If I tell you the kind of money I spent, it's, I mean, where will a peasant farmer have that kind of money to do it.
So
they have to do it manually.
So with all these interventions that government is doing, especially from the Central Bank of Nigeria, Anchor Borers program, you know, government, like you talked about mechanization, I know the highest we'll have of tractors in Nigeria is like 15,000. I don't even think if there are up to 15,000 tractors in the whole of the country.
So if we equate that with the population we have, is it enough? It's far from being enough. But anyway, we are starting something. We are just about beginning to introduce the technologies. CBN has started, and I'm sure CBN will continue. You know, the providing credit facilities to the farmers and what, especially recently, the meeting that was called, you know, for the cotton people.
Early this year.
Yeah, because the textile industries, most of them are down, the generaries are down, and it's all due to low productivity, lack of raw materials, you know. So with that now that CBN has taken steps, I think maybe by next year it could be better. And then not just that, going into the modern technologies, modern biotechnology, of course, getting in, you know, this technology is already here. We've started. We have the first cotton seeds as genetically modified, modified to resist insects. Yes, because why did the textile industries go down, like I told you, is lack of raw materials. And the lack of raw materials is, of course, due to low productivity of cotton and the challenges that the farmers face. Cotton is susceptible to so many insect attacks, of course, so many of them. And it went to the extent that even the breeders got fed up with cotton breeding. The farmers got fed up because you have to use a lot of farm inputs. Aside from fertilizer, you have to do like 10, 12 sprays. Where will the peasant farmer get that kind of money? And so that's why most of our produce in Nigeria are very expensive because of production costs. So this technology now reduces production cost. You will use less farm inputs because some seeds are developed to resist those insect attacks. And so for sure, your number of sprays will now go down from 12 down to 2 number of sprays. And that's a lot of cost savings. So the farmer will only have to spray 2 times. And then, of course, there's early maturation of the crops, because we have tested it and we've done all. There are so many, you know, our own agencies involved in this. It's a partnership, of course, public-private partnership between the Institute of Agricultural Research, Zaria, and then we have an international NGO, the African Agricultural Technology Foundation. We have Mahiko. We have so many, you know, in terms of cotton, we have Mahiko. In terms of beans, we have the
I was
ATF.
coming to it, but cotton is
so many.
It's just that
it's a non-food crop.
Yes, you've moved me now to GMO, that genetically modified organism, because from your
explanation.
From your explanation earlier, you said that we would definitely need technology
for sure
for our production capacity to increase. So you're talking about, just speak to my viewers especially about what this GMO means, because a lot of people are pro-GMO. I think we are one of those, and a lot of people are anti-GMO. So talk to me about this GMO thing, then we'll move into other conversation.
Yeah, the GMO thing, of course, is all about improving crops to resist certain diseases that are caused by fungi or caused by bacteria, you know, or viruses. Sometimes you will see plants, you know, growing abnormally, or the leaves, you know, their leaves drying up, and so on and so forth. These are like signs of diseases caused by microorganisms, and that affects productivity and all. Sometimes insects, you know, they attack as you plant. Your crop is flowering. In the case of beans, let me give you an example with beans. We have a pest called maruca. Maruca is a you know larva now?
Yes, I know.
The caterpillar.
Yes,
it creeps,
I know.
and then eats up the flowers. It also destroys the leaves of beans. It also destroys the pods, you know. And once your flower is gone, you don't have harvest again. You're not going to harvest anything. Sometimes farmers lose 100%, you know. Sometimes 80, but once in a while, some lose everything, because I think I've listened to many farmers talk about this. And so, but this technology actually addresses some of these challenges. and then it takes it away. It addresses it at the genetic level. What is that gene that is actually responsible for this? You know, there must be something. So you can now bring a gene, maybe from a different plant, you know, that you see either in the desert or anywhere, that is not being affected by any insect. So that plant must have something, a gene in it. So you can now pick the gene and put it in your crop. And all these things, in terms of safety, they are actually regulated, highly regulated.
Because I was coming to that.
For you to ensure that, yes, it takes 13 years for you to come out with a safe and a wholesome genetically modified crop or organism or food or whatever. It takes 13 good years because of the regulatory processes that it has to go through, the safety issues, just to build confidence, you know, in people, yes, that this thing is actually safe. You have to really ascertain. It goes through a lot of scrutiny. It's the most scrutinized foods in the history of mankind, most scrutinized technology in the history of mankind. Because before the GM thing, the genetic modification, there had been other technologies. We have the hybridization, that actually we have the, you know, hybridization and so many other things, you know, selective breeding that farmers started those days and what. All those, you know, they involve exchange of genes. But those ones are not regulated, you know, because you just bring them together, and but the wanted genes and the unwanted genes all come together, like in grafting. What is happening is exchange of genes. But in this case, it is precise. You know, it's humanly done. You take it off, you open up the genome, you identify your gene of interest, you take it, and then you put it in your new, you know, this thing. But because you are doing it yourself, as you know, you feel that, okay, maybe this gene I have brought in might cause, maybe bring in something new, introduce a new protein in it. So I have to really ensure, carry out all tests. As I'm testing my newly developed seed, I'm also testing the mother plants, the non-genetically modified. If at any point in time there is a difference between the two, you know, a large difference, I have to drop that project.
Now, how
so
far,
in terms of safety, I think that is being
but is that still
care of.
not being contend against? That a lot of people still have problems with GMO foods, because I know if we continue that, we will not finish.
I know it's
we
because
end
of
this show.
One, because of a lack of information. You know, some of them are ignorant. They don't really know. But I know that most places, when I go and I talk, I give explanation, I give them that knowledge, they all change. Most people change. But there are some people in the society, the environmentalists, of course, most of them, because they are being sponsored by the organic group, the organic technology group, and by the Greenpeace and what, those ones are on salaries. So those ones will never agree to you that it's a safe technology. But the technology is safe. It has history of safe use for, I think, for 24 years, because commercialization started in US in 1996. And up to today, there isn't, you know, any deleterious effect that have been discovered or what. And the regulation, you know, is also being developed. All these regulatory steps and what are progressively being developed and monitored by World Health Organization.
Now, the question is,
that is in charge of safety.
Yes, with all those things that you're saying, are we ready? Are we trying to go that route in terms of making agriculture more attractive?
Of course, we are ready, because we have two agencies in Nigeria. We have the National Biotechnology Development Agency.
I think we have biosafety too.
We have the National Biosafety Management Agency, which is actually, its main function is to ensure that what the breeders or the scientists are doing is safe as the conventional counterpart. And I think they are well capacitated in handling these issues. They've started in 2015, and they're still on. And my agency, which is the promoting agency, so we all work together with the agricultural research institutes that we have in Nigeria. Most of these developments are actually being handled by the Agri-Research Institutes. Yeah, because most of them have mandates for specific crops. If you are dealing with beans, it has to be Institute for Agricultural Research.
But I think we have...
If you are dealing with rice,
beans,
it has to be National Cereals Research Institute. If you are dealing with cassava, it has to be National Root Crops Research Institute in Umudike. So you see that it's not just it's a partnership. It's actually not just like one agency or one institution handling this. And of course, the technology is an intervention tool. It only comes in where the conventional technology cannot work. Because anything that has to do, you attack a problem at the genetic level, you are done with it. And the GMOs, when you're talking about GMOs, it's not just food, drugs. We have drugs that are GMOs. We have insulin, it's a GMO. We have so many. We have vaccines. Most vaccines these days are GMOs.
Okay, I think I may just do a show for GMO on a different
on
a different day.
I think that's just by the side.
Yeah, by the side. But perhaps why we
it actually contributes to this
productivity.
To productivity. We're not saying it's a panacea, but it can contribute. It's one of those factors. It's all combined together.
Okay, now let me ask you one final question, because I'll take my other guest that is standing by from Lagos. The final question is, President Buhari has not appointed ministers yet. He will soon appoint ministers, I'm hoping. What do you think that the next Minister of Agriculture should put on his table? Should address as a matter of fact? If it's a minister that will be wearing agbada, let him take the agbada up. Let him take it up like this. Let's see his hands working.
I think I would prefer that the next minister should be a breeder.
A breeder?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
A breeder, somebody from, the core. A breeder is actually someone who studied, all this crop, production. Somebody who is in the agri, not just a farmer. I mean, a breeder, he develops this technology. Plant breeding is about, is a process of growing crops, learning, knowing so much about how the crop is, as you plant, the moment you plant, how it is growing, to the time of harvest and what you monitor, you do, is a lot of things about a breeder. Raising, animals is not just about crossbreed. We have animal breeders, we have really plant breeders.
Like agricultural
growing crops, growing plants, certain plants that are, already, they are food crops, mostly food crops, breeders, mostly food crops,
Okay.
Either a breeder or either someone who is in that field.
Someone who is in that. Because agriculture
crop production,
is quite vast.
I think
the financing part is also part of it. There's the financing part. But
yes,
at least you've given us your own view. I want to say many thanks.
That would be better because that would be better. That would be best.
Okay, I want to say many thanks for joining me on the program today. We'll try as much as possible to fix another date to see what we can talk about more in agriculture. All right, that's the much we can take on this segment. I've been speaking with Dr. Rose Gidado. She's the Deputy Director of National Biotechnology Development Agency, that's NABDA. She's also the Country Coordinator, Open Forum on Agricultural Biotechnology in Africa, the